What's going on, guys? I'm going to rank each of the different position groups in the AFC East, weighted by a positional value, throw coaching in there, tally them all up at the end, and see where the Jets stack up compared to the Bills, Patriots, and Miami Dolphins. A lot of really close calls, some tough decisions. So look forward to disagreeing with Jet fans and fellow AFC East fans in the comments below. But if you think it's a neat exercise, a thumbs up is an easy way to show it. And here is a little bit of a graphic that's going to just guide my thinking here. So, head coach and quarterback, we're going to weight times two compared to the baseline positions that are just 1 point in safety, linebacker, and running back. And then kind of in the middle, I do have the trenches, offensive line and defensive line weighted as times 1.5. And then corner and wide receiver, I do think are more important than the latter position group. So we're going to go with 1.25 times there, just because I think if we were to, grade linebacker as the same weight as quarterback, we're probably not going to get a very accurate total at the end there. So we're going to start with quarterback and then we'll go to head coach. Now, I think the easiest decision to make for me is our buddy McCorkle Jones going in there at number 4. Now, I do think now that he has an actual offensive coordinator, he can do maybe like a diet Kirk Cousins impersonation. And when we get to some other Patriots position groups, we'll see why they're going to be a tough out this year. But I just think he's by far the most limited quarterback in the division. That one's pretty easy for me. Now, next, I do have Tua in at the 3 spot. Dolphins fans will probably say he's better than a washed Aaron Rodgers, but let's just do an honest thought experiment. My friends from South Beach, look, if you took Tua Tagovailoa, broke his left thumb, and then exchanged Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle for Christian Watson and Alan Lazard, sending Tyreek and Waddle to Green Bay and healing the thumb of a guy who last time when he didn't have a broken thumb was coming off of 2 back-to-back MVPs. Come on. Now again, Tua last year he was better than I ever thought he would be. And I don't think it's fair to say any quarterback could produce those wide receivers. He's a pretty accurate thrower of the ball. He makes fairly sound decisions. The stats, he was top 10 in a lot of metrics, but he ain't Aaron Rodgers. Come on now. So now it's up to Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen. Also, the durability factor with Tua. And again, like Rodgers may have some inherent durability concerns because he's almost 40, but I have a track record of Rodgers and Josh Allen 3 straight years playing every single game, and Tua has been penciled in to miss about a month. So it's kind of a non-starter there when you talk about that, in addition to the fact that it's Aaron freaking Rodgers. Now, Aaron Rodgers or Josh Allen. Well, we do have to factor in, a couple different things here. Number one, if Aaron Rodgers looks like he did 2 years ago, it's Aaron Rodgers, not close. If Aaron Rodgers looks like he did last year, it's Josh Allen, not close. If Aaron Rodgers looks like in between that, right, which is what I think I'm expecting. I'm not expecting MVP, but I'm not expecting broken thumb throwing to Romeo Dobbs, right? Then it's going to be pretty close because Allen has kind of given us a baseline of what to expect from him. I will say, though, as well, Allen played through an injury last year, too. He had the partial UCL tear, and you could tell the velocity was still there, but you could tell the touch was missing a little bit. You saw the completion percentage dip and the turnover-worthy plays up significantly for Allen after that injury. So you're really weighting Rodgers' ability to take care of the ball versus Josh Allen's running ability. But I'm going to give the nod to Allen for now. I think, look, we got to decide if we're talking trash or if we're talking ball. Because if we're talking trash, turnover machine, you choked, all that stuff. But if we're talking ball, if you had a draft where all players in the NFL were available, right? Age and positional value being a factor, and it was just a fantasy draft. Patrick Mahomes is unanimous pick number 1. And then Josh Allen is in the conversation for pick number 2 with guys like Joe Burrow. And the floor would be pick number 4 for Allen. So there's that. Now the turnovers for Allen, I think it's sometimes he's reckless with the ball, but he's also asked to provide a higher volume of his team's offense than any other quarterback in the NFL. I'll give it to him for now, but I think it's definitely a lot closer than most Bills fans want to admit if Aaron Rodgers can be approaching his MVP form. So there's quarterback that is weighted times two. It's one of the most important positions we're going to rank here, as well as head coach, which isn't really a position, but I think it'd be an incomplete ranking if we didn't factor in coaching. Now, I think this kind of falls into place pretty easily at 1 and 2. Bill Belichick, I do think that Tom Brady was 75% of the evil empire. And I think, again, if you did the same experiment with coaches where you made all the coaches in the NFL available, even though Belichick has the best resume of all time, I don't think he's the top choice. I think teams in 2023 would rather have Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan over Bill Belichick, but or any of the other coaches in the AFC East. I don't know if McDermott's quite in that tier with those guys. I think he's in that second tier with guys like Mike Vrabel. So we'll start off with the hoodie in the number one spot there. Then McDermott, pretty easy number two. The other two guys just don't really have the sample size yet. And McDermott, again, his seat will get a little hot in short order if they don't make it to a Super Bowl because, the talent has definitely been there. But let's not forget that the Bills before he took over were where the Jets have been the last 13 years. They had the longest playoff drought in sports, and he broke that playoff drought with Tyrod Taylor throwing passes to Kelvin Benjamin and Zay Jones. And then with Josh Allen, I think, they did make the playoffs with Josh Allen the second year before Josh Allen was really good. So he's unequivocally changed their culture, brought some good defense there. I think as a Jets fan, like if you're looking at coaching comps, if Robert Saleh can turn into Sean McDermott, we're signing for that. We're signing for that all day. So he's number two. Now, with Saleh and McDaniels, I think they're very similar because they're two guys who are coordinators, assistants, right? And they've come in and in pretty short order, they have fixed the side of the ball that is their expertise. Jets going from a bottom five to a top five defense with some questions remaining on offense that should be answered by Aaron Rodgers. And then McDaniels really exploding and turning that passing game elite, although Miami's defense did regress going from Flores to McDaniels. And I think as fans from either team, we have to concede two things. Number one, as a Jets fan, if Robert Saleh, down to his third string quarterback, made the playoffs and went into Buffalo in the snow and it had the Bills fighting tooth and nail in a one possession game with his third string quarter, he would have a statue outside of MetLife Stadium. Now, Dolphins fans, you also have to concede that if Robert Saleh had a quarterback that could even remotely hit the basic passes that Tua could hit for half a season, the Jets would have probably been in that playoff spot instead of the Dolphins. So it's a tie for me. I'll defer to the coordinators. Since Saleh's a defensive coach, I'll go the Jets OC versus the Dolphins DC. I'll do that. Hackett versus Fangio. I think Hackett was a great hire for the Jets because they have Rodgers. I gave that hiring an A when I graded their offseason. But I do think that Fangio in a vacuum is probably has a better resume as a DC than Hackett does as an OC. So I'll go Miami in 3, Jets at 4 for coaching. If you want to put the Jets at 3, I don't really have a strong opinion about that either way. But I think that's how that shakes out so far for head coaching, which is also weighted times 2. All right, let's get into the offensive line. And offensive line is probably one of the weaker position groups across the division. And we get to like defensive line and corner, it's stacked all over, but offensive line is definitely a struggle. Patriots are number 1. Again, if you're a fan from another team, look, I'm going off what I know. I know these teams fairly well. I had to do some analytic digging for your lower tier guys and your backups, but I'm not rolling the all 22 on your third string left guard. So correct me if I make some mistakes here. But I do know that the Patriots offensive line, even though they're not that talented, they were analytically just so far and away better than the rest of these units. Didn't really have a lot of turnover in terms of starters. In fact, they had a couple of rookie starters that should be better next year. So we'll put them first. Then 2, 3, and 4 could honestly go in any order. I think all 3 teams, Miami, Buffalo, and New York, have one blue chip player, right? Armstead, Vera Tucker, and Dawkins. And there's some serviceable guys. Miami has Williams and Hunt. Buffalo has Morris and Bates, McGovern, who's okay. Jets have Tomlinson and Brown, 2 former Pro Bowlers who are both kind of on the wrong side of 30. I think I'm going to put Miami at 4 just because the left guard with Eichenberg and Jackson at left guard and right tackle are just two massive holes. And I don't think their depth is great. So I think although they have probably the best single offensive lineman out of the group in Armstead, I'd probably put them at 4. Now between the Bills and the Jets, I think the Bills have a higher floor of their offensive line just because they don't have any turnstiles. Besides Spencer Brown, he's a pretty weak point, but they upgraded. McGovern's better than what they had with Saffold last year, and Osiris Torrance. Even if he's a backup, that's pretty good depth. But I think the Jets have excellent depth. The Jets definitely have the best depth out of these groups. Now, that's partially because they've had to invest in it because they've been so injured. But I'm looking at the depth and the ceiling of the Jets offensive line when they have 3 guys with Pro Bowl ceilings in Brown, Becton, and Vera Tucker, and then 3 backup players who each have 65 plus starts individually, who are all still at the end of their prime. Because of ceiling and depth, I'm going to put the Jets at number 2. Again, you could really put 2 through 4 in almost any order. It's a weak group across the division, but ceiling and depth is going to have me put New York Jets at 2, Buffalo at 3, and Miami at 4 for the offensive line. All right, next let's go to who they're blocking for, the running back position. Now, quick caveat, obviously, Jets fans, if Breece Hall is healthy, we're going to be ranking a lot higher. I think he is obviously the single most talented running back in the division, undoubtedly. But to make an easy decision to start, guys, the Miami Dolphins have the most sneaky, good, underrated running back room in the NFL, which is why their interest in Dalvin Cook is a little bit perplexing. I guess you could never have too much talent, but they got 2 guys in Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson who are 5-yard per carry guys with elite nerd stats behind not a great offensive line, both 7+ 100 yards, Mostert almost 900 yards. And then they add Devon Achane, who, Jets fans, as high as we are on Izzy Abanikanda, Devon Achane is that dude from Miami, and I think he's even more elusive. 3rd-round pick there. Just incredible speed. Really underrated group. I think with Breece Hall's injury and some other factors we'll get to with the other teams, I think that's the best running back room in the division. Now, for me, the next best easy decision is Patriots at 4, although Ramondre Stevenson is an absolute dog. He's a beast. Jets fans, remember, we couldn't tackle his ass. But they lost Damian Harris, who goes to Buffalo, who was a touchdown machine for them. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, Patriots fans, if you're in here, but our lads had Ty Montgomery as your second running back, who I didn't even know was still in the league. He's like a quasi receiver, running back, special teamer, had -2 rushing yards all of last season. So that is just that lack of depth. I have to put the Patriots at 4. Now, Bills versus Jets. I like what the Jets, we've talked about it, right? If we're getting 2/3 of Breece Hall, we're not even sure he's going to be available for week 1. Post Thanksgiving, if Breece Hall is close to 90%, I'm probably putting the Jets at 1. If Izzy hits, the Jets have a ceiling of 1 in the running back room, but James Cook is a stud for Buffalo. They don't like to use him. I don't know why. And then they get Damian Harris from New England, who has 18 touchdowns in his last 25 games. They have Latavius Murray, who had 700 yards last year. They have Naheem Hines, who's a decent role-playing back. So I got Buffalo at number 2 with Breece Hall on the mend. Jets at 3. Again, if Breece Hall wants to have an Adrian Peterson-like ACL recovery, then we can go to 1. But assuming the normal ACL recovery for young stud running backs, that's how I see it shaking out so far. All right, let's go to wide receivers. Easy decision here is Miami at 1. Depth isn't super great. They do have Braxton Berrios. I wonder if he's their starting slot now, but the headline is the 2 speed demons at the top, to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. That is just a nightmare to cover. That's obviously number 1. And then Patriots, I got to go 4 here. They have 3 guys who are decent, but they don't have one single receiver that is keeping you up at night or that you feel like you have to roll a safety towards. If they get DeAndre Hopkins, that definitely will change the equation. But for right now, I have the Patriots at 4. Jets and Bills. Now, okay, Stephon Diggs, you would say, is the best receiver in that bunch. Now, I would say Garrett Wilson had 1,100 receiving yards, and he is the only rookie since they started keeping track of quarterback rating that had over 1,100 yards with a team that had a collective quarterback rating in the bottom 5 of the NFL. And even if you project the games that Garrett Wilson played with any quarterback not named Zach Wilson, it would have been closer to 1,400 yards. And Stephon Diggs never sniffed that with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is eons better than any quarterback the Jets had. So can Garrett Wilson with Aaron Rodgers produce at the same clip of Stephon Diggs? Yes, that's not even a take. That's just information. And Bills fans, if it's information you don't like, you got to talk to your therapist about it, because Garrett Wilson can undoubtedly produce the same clip of Stephon Diggs. Now, if you want to say he's still the better receiver, that's fine because he's more proven. Now, they both have alpha number ones, Bills and Jets. The number 2 receiver, I think Gabe Davis, Corey Davis, Allen Lazard are both in the same tier of guy who you love them if they were your number 3. If they're your number 2, you probably want to do better. I think Corey Davis and Gabe Davis, very identical receivers to me. But Gabe Davis has been more durable, and he had much better production last year. So I'd say Gabe Davis is the best number 2 out of the bunch. But then the depth is really where the Jets kind of pull away from me. Because Lazard is, again, you're talking about the Bills with Khalil Shakir, who I know Bills fans, he's going to be Antonio Brown, but pretend he's not. I mean, even down to Mecole Hardman. Mecole Hardman, Bills fans, if Khalil Shakir, your second round slot receiver, if he goes on to do what Mecole Hardman has done in his last 22 games, he's got 1,100 scrimmage yards and 9 touchdowns. Are you taking that out of Khalil Shakir's next 22 games when he barely did anything last year? You probably are. All the way down to Randall Cobb. The Bills wide receiver room 3 through 5 is like a bunch of Madden creative player dudes. It's horrible depth, objectively. So the depth for me is going to swing this one towards the Jets at number 2. All right. So Miami, Jets, Buffalo, and then New England in the wide receiver room. Next, let's go to tight ends. Easiest decision is Miami at 4. It doesn't even seem like they care about that position. They didn't really have a plan to use Mike Gesicki last year. I think they're just going to be such a wide receiver focused team. That is definitely the easiest decision to make. Then it's tough again. I will put the Patriots at 3. I know they got Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki, 2 guys who can be in the 600-yard range, but Gesicki really gives you nothing as a blocker. And then when I look at the team like the Jets, who I think has a more complete tight end room with Conklin and Uzama both being able to hold their own as blockers. Ruckert, a second-year, third-round pick. They do have some expectations of playing a role. So, Ruckert's probably the best tight end 3 in the division. I think it's fair to say that. So the Jets probably have the best depth. The Bills, man, Dalton Kincaid is a problem. He's really good, man. And I think honestly, the Bills are better off getting him than they were of the 4th or 5th receiver off the board. He's going to be a stud. Now, rookie tight end struggled to produce, but I think that you're going to see him almost be a glorified slot receiver and get the Evan Ingram treatment, right? Where the Giants played him in the slot and he got 115 targets as a rookie. Now, Kincaid's a lot better than Evan Ingram, but I'm just saying the type of role he can play. And you pair that with Dawson Knox, and I think they're going to supplement their lack of wide receiver depth with that stud tight end. Just because of that ceiling, I just think Kincaid is going to be that impactful, and he's going to get a really good target share. I am going to go Bills 1. I think it was really close to receiver, and I lean to Jets. It's pretty close to tight end, so I'll lean Bills there to keep this as objective as I can. All right, now we're going to flip over to the defensive side of the ball. We're going to start with the defensive line. These are 4 of the top 10 defensive lines in the NFL. We got blue chippers in Quinnen Williams, Von Miller, but he's injured. Matt Judon, most underappreciated defensive superstar in the NFL. He's a beast. Miami, Christian Wilkins. I don't care what the stats say. He can absolutely dominate and wreck games. Then you got some other guys like on the come up. The Jets have young guys like Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson. Jalen Phillips, look, Jalen Phillips is going to be a 12-plus sack dude. That guy's a future All-Pro. He's really good. The Bills with Greg Rousseau is an absolute monster. These defensive lines are stacked. But I'm going to pull I'm just going to pull rank here, guys. If you're a fan of our team, trust me, this is not a discussion. Jets number one. Now, go to any. We could talk about the talents of who's better, who's that, whatever. I do think Quinton Williams is the single best defensive lineman in the division right now, slightly ahead of Matt Judon. And because Von Miller is almost 35 and has a torn ACL, and because Quinton dominates from the interior, blowing up double teams, an all pro, one of the top 2 or 3 players at his position in the NFL. I think it's the only defensive lineman we could say that about. So the top end talent is there, and they have like 7 or 8 dudes who can start. But last year, Jets dead last, 32nd in the NFL in blitz rate, second in pressure rate. They use the fifth most amount of light boxes, but were 8th in yards per carry against the run, which was the highest discrepancy of all teams. So basically, all the analytics tell us is that when the Jets have 4 humans put their hand in the dirt versus the pass or the run, they are as effective as any group in the NFL, and they got better. So Jets number one. If Von Miller didn't have a torn ACL, it'd be a discussion, but he does. New England, again, they may be the like 10th or 11th best defensive line in the NFL. I understand that. They got guys like Dietrich Wise who get 7 or 8 sacks for no reason, and then when they sign somewhere else, they'll be nobodies. Kind of how it goes. Uche is a really good situational pass rusher. That's kind of like their version of Bryce Huff, Jets fans. But I just think when I'm looking at a team like Miami, who I'm going to put third, who has Jalen Phillips and Wilkins, to me, are 2 blue chippers. I think Jalen Phillips is primed for a breakout season into a perennial 12-plus sack kind of guy. Nick Chubb was an egregious trade and overpay, but he's still really good. But I think the Bills' depth is better. So even with Von Miller probably not playing in September, I still think the Leonard Floyd pickup, if they didn't do that, they'd probably be third. That's a really good get for them. They need another guy who could win with speed and length. Obviously, I like Greg Rousseau. Ed Oliver, again, was an absolutely disgraceful contract that they will regret soon. But he, defensive tackles who can get you 5 sacks and 40 pressures don't grow on trees. So he's good. They got Poona Ford for depth. And then, eventually, same thing with Breece Hall. If Von Miller can get rolling post Thanksgiving, they'll be pretty good too. Again, there's a lot of different ways you can rank these units. This was another close one. But Jets number one was a pretty easy decision to me when they were analytically the best against the run and the pass with their front 4, and that front 4 got better. I don't know how else you would rank it. Okay, next, linebackers, which is one of the lower weighted position groups. And all right, so I think the Miami Dolphins, dude, they got there's a lot of really underrated talent on this Miami Dolphins football team. You hate to see it. Let me just grab my notes again real quick, because I was going off the cuff so far, but I got to remember some of these names I looked into. Okay, so Miami, David Long, what a signing! How'd they get him for 2 years, $12 million? I don't know. He's one of the best linebackers in the NFL, plus Jerome Baker, who's solid. So I got Miami at number one because they got 2 dudes who are really damn good. Miami is the best unit. Now, I will put the Bills at number 2. I think Matt Milano is the single best linebacker in the conference, right? He's up there with the Fred Warners of the NFL. He's elite. They did lose Tremaine Edmonds. They replaced him with Dorian Williams. So if they still had Tremaine, I'd maybe put him above Miami, but that's a pretty big hole to fill, even though I do think Chicago overpaid him. Jets and Patriots are similar because they have one stud. Patriots have Bentley. The Jets have CJ Mosley, and then they have a bunch of serviceable kind of guys. But Jet fans, the analytics were so stark. Everything Patriot linebackers were asked to do, the football nerds say they did it at a much, much higher clip. So I'm going to defer and say Patriots 3, Jets 4. I think the Jets also, if they can add some depth, Quan Alexander signing would go a long way. But I'll put the Jets at 4 there. Feel is disrespectful to CJ Mosley, but I'm just trying to be objective here. I mean, the Dolphins have 2 really good starters. The Bills have the best dude in the conference. And the Patriots, I don't know if it's just the scheme or whatever it may be, but they just graded out so much freaking higher. And I don't know if I have a good enough reason from what I saw with my eyes to to usurp those analytics at linebacker. Now, corner. So I think the Jets and Dolphins have the two best cornerback rooms in the NFL, but the Jets have the best. Sauce Gardner, he was the best corner in the NFL last year, and he should only get better. He was a rookie. Now, Miami, you'd say, well, they have Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey being washed is just something made up. People just assume the minute a player is past their prime, they're washed. Jalen Ramsey is still excellent. Both of these teams have really underrated nickel corners in Michael Carter and Kohu. But to me, the biggest difference is DJ Reed versus Xavier Howard. And again, Dolphin fans are hopeful that Xavier Howard returns to his 2019 form, which when he was a top 10 corner, but corners off of injuries on the wrong side of 30, when DJ Reed played like a top 10 corner last year and he's still smack dab in the middle of his prime, maybe he'll regress to the mean a little bit and be like the 15th best corner. But Xavier Howard was a shell of himself last year. And sometimes when corners lose it, they lose it. So that's the difference there for me. The Buffalo Bills, I do have. It's hard because I think Christian Gonzalez is going to be really good for the Pats as a rookie. But I will put the Bills at third. Kyrie Elam should be solid in year two. Teron Johnson. All three of these teams have really good nickel corners. Teron Johnson is a really good nickel. And then Tre'Davious White. Similar situation to Howard, but he's 2.5 years younger. So I'm a little bit more optimistic about a Trey White bounce back than I am for one with X-Man. Patriots, they're going to be good too. And they're going to be so well coached. I feel like I'm disrespecting the Patriots here. I don't know. I just think the talent, they're kind of behind it by a little bit in each of these position groups. So that's the way I see it shaking out at corner. We'll go to safety. Easiest decision for me is unfortunately, the Jets at 4. They are probably going to be at 4, even with Chuck Clark. And now they've already lost a starter for the season. They replaced him with Adrian Amos, but the Jets just haven't put a lot of money in. You could tell the resources into linebacker and safety. They've kind of said, we're going to have a great defensive line, great corners, and then linebacker and safety will try to be good enough. But they are obviously the 4th best group. Bills number 1. Now they're both on the wrong side of 30. So I don't know how much longer this is going to be the case. Hyde and Poyer were both injured last year, but they are both right around Pro Bowl level safeties who are interchangeable Swiss Army knives and can do it all. So we'll have them there. And then, so it's kind of between the ceiling of Javon Holland versus the Patriots having 2 guys who are rock solid in Phillips and Duggar. I'm going to go Miami. I mean, I've been crapping on the Patriots the whole time. Why stop now? But I think Javon Holland is probably the single best safety in the division, and he's a star. So his stardom will give them the nod there at number 2. Patriots will round it out 1 through 4. Buffalo, Miami, New England, and the gosh darn New York Jets. All right, so let's see how it all shaked out. Here is the totals, the weighted totals. So Bills, total of 38 points. They were first. Jets second, 33 2/4. Miami right behind the Jets, 33 even. And Patriots in last at 28.85. Now, this was, before I started this exercise, this was the exact order I predicted it would go. The Bills do have a bigger gap than I imagined. But again, that's because of how we weighted quarterback and head coach. In my opinion, they have right now, if I'm being honest, I think by a little bit, the best quarterback in the division. And inarguably the second most accomplished coach. You'd have to put McDermott at number 2. So how could the Jets close this gap? Well, number 1, I could just be wrong on some of these. I don't know. But I think our coaching staff is, as a collective, is unproven together. So, be really good, be a really good coach team. Aaron Rodgers, be closer to your MVP form, right? I think those are the 2 easiest ways. And then the injury recoveries of guys like Breece Hall or Becton, maybe, pushing that offensive line ranking up 1 spot. So there's some variance there. Now, if you're curious, if we just weighted all the different groups as equal, the Jets, Dolphins, and Bills are pretty much even. And then the Patriots were further behind. But I don't think that's fair. I think you have to value quarterback, offensive line is more important than like running back and linebacker. So that's how it shakes out, in my humble opinion. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll talk all soon.